have much formal education at all, and yet in the providence of God, he equips, he prepares people in a variety of ways to be of service to him. Something C.S. Lewis said about this that I always enjoy thinking about and appreciate thinking about for myself, and that is that there's a place in God's kingdom for people with very little sense.
Yeah.
But God expects us to use the sense we've been given, says C.S. Lewis. You know, and I think that's good. You know, I mean, if you can use donkeys, you know,
Yes.
and speak to donkeys, I feel fairly confident he'll use me. But Calvin was extraordinarily gifted, and his mother Jeanne Frank. And his father, Gerard, now his mother dies when he's about 7, right here at Grain Place in French, but the anglicized version is Grain Place, dies when he's 7, and but they recognize right away that this is an extraordinary mind, an extraordinarily gifted young man, and probably from his mother's nurture, from his infancy, probably in utero even, her humming away chants from the Psalms, you know, that she heard. As far as we know, she was illiterate, couldn't read or write. There's no reason why she would have, because there was no formal education for women, get this, girls, ladies, until the Reformation in Europe. Next time somebody says that Christianity is opposed to learning and knowledge and education, I want you to very gently and in love, with respect, stop them and remind them that while in the Middle Ages, while women had no opportunities for formal education, the Protestant Reformation and the Reformers began schools. For example, in Scotland, Knox, who said that Calvin's Geneva was the most perfect school of Christ since the days of the apostles, went back to Scotland and started the very first national education system. Yeah, and some of us homeschool, some of us are in Christian schools, and all that. We're thinking, whoa, that can't be good, right? Oh yeah, this was really, really good. That's the curriculum, the Geneva Bible with those 3,000 commentary notes on the margins, and Calvin's Catechism from Geneva, translated into English. That was the initial curriculum. Who was it for? Rich boys? Boys from rich families? Yeah. Boys from poor families? Yes. Girls from rich families? Yes. Girls from poor families? Yes. It was for everybody in Scotland. Do you know what Knox said about that? So shaped by Calvin's legacy there in Geneva, those 5 years of refugee. He said that since you will be taught not by angels, but you'll be taught by men, he wants everybody with their Bible open. He wants universal literacy so that people can read the Bible and not be led astray by their shepherds. Do you know why Knox knew that? Because he read his Old Testament, you know, and because he also knew something about church history.
Yeah.
And sadly, we don't need the outside snipers in the church. We breed our own internal, we commit suicide internally as churches. And that's why we need to, every generation, we need to go back to the fundamentals of the gospel. Calvin himself would say that was the case, that since the over and over again, the enemy's stratagem, he said, was to corrupt the gospel little by little. Therefore, we need to be constantly vigilant against any corruptions of the gospel, Calvin would say later. He understood it. We forget it. We always think, what do we think? We think, well, you know, it'll happen in their church.
Right.
It won't happen in my church. It'll happen in their family because they don't do what we do as perfect parents. You know, it'll happen in, that's what we do, isn't it? And what's the devil doing when we do that? Got him, right? Because that's the stratagem. Calvin observed that very, very accurately. Think about Calvin's goodbye. Now, he didn't say goodbye to his mother in 1523 because she had passed away. His father had remarried, but he said goodbye to his family and hightailed it to Paris, right from the door of this house. And then fast forward to World War I, since we're very interested in that. April 18th, the British Fifth Army defending the town as best they could at that point, and the Hindenburg-Ludendorff offensive. Backs against the wall, all out artillery barrage. Why Noyon? It's not a significant place. Why did they bother with this? Why did they want to bomb, Calvin's house? Well, they weren't targeting Calvin's house. They were targeting the city. But they wanted it because of that Lost Valley, where we just were in Compiègne. There's a rail line there, right? And that was also convenient to meet there because it's a rail line. Where's that rail line run? It runs along a river valley that would extend from Germany down to Paris. The best route for the Hindenburg-Ludendorff offensive was the Lost Valley. So they wanted to bombard their way through this valley, and Noyon-le-Saint, as it was called then, was right in the valley. One last thing here, and then we'll move on back up to the cathedral. That is the patron saint of this region was Saint Eloi throughout the Middle Ages, and they claim to have the relic, the bones of Saint Eloi, at the cloister just outside. I believe it was a Franciscan cloister just out on the edge of town. But the bishop got kind of muscly, and he went over there to the abbot, and he muscled the bones of Saint Eloi, and they're held in the cathedral supposedly to this day. And the bones of Saint Eloi were he's the patron saint of blacksmiths. This is Picardy, this region in France, and through the Middle Ages, for centuries, this has been a place where they breed and raise and train horses. And so lots of blacksmiths and all. In fact, there was a really weird medieval sort of ritual that breeders of horses would do in hopes of getting all this blessing from Saint Eloi, the patron saint of blacksmiths, where they would come to Noyon to venerate the relic during breeding season. So in hopes that they would get really good foals from their mares and all. I won't go into the details of that, but it's a rather medieval sort of sounding story. But in any case, Saint Eloi, you'll see that name around from time to time. His bones are in the cathedral. Speaking of the cathedral, let's about face and quick march left,